Hello, hello. Welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I'm your host, Connor Rebush. With me is Phil McKenzie, and we are here to talk to you today about UFC. What are they calling this one? Rochester, New York. Again, Phil, I have to begin the show with my curmudgeonly old man complaint. Stadium names were so much better when it was like a rich dude's name on the building. This is at Blue Cross Arena. Like, how boring is that?
Yeah, it would be better if they were named after Old World Industry as well, because those things were so, it was so immediately apparent what they were about. Like, you'd want to have something called, like, the American Tire Company Arena. Like, this is the problem, is that in our modern corporate hellscape, corporations tend to have hideous and weird names that don't mean anything. I don't like those either. The 2 weeks ago, the car was in the Canadian Tire Center. No, I like the Canadian Tire Center.
No!
You know exactly what you're getting from the Canadian Tire Center. God damn it, Connor.
No, that's the thing. You don't. It has nothing to do with tires.
I think the company makes sense. You know what you're getting. Polite tires.
I hope I'm smart enough in the post-recording phase to just put a hard edit in here and just jump the show forward to the normal discussion people actually came for. Hello, welcome to two prematurely old men complaining about things that truly do not matter. We are really here to talk to you about the upcoming battle between Rafael Dos Anjos and Kevin Lee, a very compelling main event fight, on top of, as seems to be the case for most cards these days, a pretty uninspired undercard. But what can you do? There's a couple of other fights from that we want to talk about, namely the co-main event. Neil Magny is fighting Vicente Luque, and just before that, Antonio Carlos Jr., old shoeface, fights Ian Hainish, who had a very surprising win, in fact, in his debut over Cesar Ferreira. After that, we're going to be getting on to the stuff that I think we're most excited to talk to you about. The aftermath of UFC 237, which was at times weird, at times fun, and at times very sad. Rose Namajunas got bache estaca'd into the Shadow Realm by Jessica Andrade, pile-driven into oblivion in the second round. Jared Cannonier fucked up Anderson Silva's leg again. And Jose Aldo got outpointed on the feet by Alexander Volkanovski. So we have some things to talk to you about, but we'll be getting to that later in the show. First up, Kevin Lee, Rafael Dos Anjos. What do you think, Phil?
It's a fascinating fight because Rafael Dos Anjos is one of these guys who has kind of had the book written on him, and the book is aggressive, powerful wrestlers, amongst other things. But primarily the book is pressure. So Rafael Dos Anjos is a classic King's MMA fighter who comes in behind big right hook and big left hand and big left body kick, and he's very good at pushing people into the fence and fucking them up there. He is less good at being forced back into the fence, where he tends to sort of give up the clinch repeatedly. He is not a man to pivot away from things. Let us put it that way.
Neither in fighting nor in life.
No, that is very true. He will take every hard matchup that comes his way. Mm-hmm. And we love him for it. Mm-hmm. And Kevin Lee is an interesting style matchup then, because Kevin Lee is a large, extremely powerful wrestler. Kevin Lee has proven to be, if not, I don't necessarily want to say he's a kind of a fighter that can change his style a great deal, but he is someone that has shown that he is coachable and he understands the basics of style matchups. Mm-hmm. And we saw this most clearly when he fought Edson Barboza, which on the very most basic level follows the same blueprint as an RDA fight does, which is just mash this guy into the cage at all costs, fuck him up in the clinch, and take him down.
Yeah.
The question here is that the problem here for Kevin Lee is that this is a much, much harder version of that same style matchup. That Rafael Dos Anjos can be put into the fence about as much as Edson Barboza can, but he's going to make it much more costly for you to do that, both in the fact that Barboza will sort of never really stop galloping away, and will allow himself to be corralled back into the fence with kicks and such like. And then but RDA will simply sit down on big punches the minute it becomes obvious that you are going to close in on him, that he's not getting away. He will just rip you to the fucking body with either a punch or a knee. And then once you're in the clinch, Edson Barboza is sort of offensively kind of empty there, and RDA is tremendously dangerous.
Yeah.
Both from the collar tie and from his own ability to hit takedowns. I mean, like, it's really notable that he actually turned the wrestling around on Colby Covington at one point in their last fight. I think it was in the 4th round.
Genuinely one of the best, specifically one of the best clinch fighters in the sport right now, still, is RDA.
Oh, yeah.
But that's the thing, Phil. It's another one of those matchups for RDA, as you said, and every time I go through the experience of saying, well, I know how this style matchup is for RDA. Does this harbinger of that bad matchup, does this particular example have enough little windows for him to fight his way out of it? You know, and well, I guess that wasn't really a question against Usman. Usman, I pretty flatly, I think both of us were like, well, we've seen this. He's going to get out wrestled and smashed into the fence. But against Covington, it was like, well, has RDA's boxing gotten sharp enough and Covington's striking is rudimentary enough that he can find little openings, you know? And, you know, he made it close. It was competitive as hell, but as it turns out, no, it was not enough. The little tactical things were not enough to override the main strategic or stylistic flaw. Likewise, against Khabib, back when he fought Khabib, it's like, well, you know, there's just never any openings. And now with Kevin Lee, I'm looking at the exact same kind of matchup, except this time, he's not as smooth a phase shifter, perhaps. He's more fragile. He's maybe more prone to gassing. I don't know. There's always these little asterisks, and each time it's very difficult to ascertain whether that's enough to justify picking RDA to win a fight against someone who, if he's watched or his coaches have watched any of RDA's fights against all of these big, strong wrestlers, will know exactly how to win this fight. It's a pretty straightforward challenge for Kevin Lee.
Yeah. So the question is, so that Covington fight in particular was very close. Some people had RDA winning it. I did not, but yeah. I can see the argument. But
I mean, my read for picking RDA there was almost right. You know, he almost did it.
Yeah. So the question is Kevin Lee as durable as Covington? Is he as relentless on the feet as Covington? Or if he isn't, does he have significant physical attributes which will make up for him not being as good in those areas? Because Usman, for example, does not throw the same volume as Covington does. But as it turned out, it didn't matter because he's much stronger. Mm-hmm. And that was just kind of the story of it, is that RDA got into the clinch with Covington and he was like, well, I'm at approximate strength parity with this guy. So, you know, it became a very grueling war of attrition where Covington's better cardio just kind of won out down the stretch. And even then, it was a close run thing, as Covington had to get a significant second win. Whereas with Usman, they just locked up, and Usman was just like, no, mate, I'm a good deal stronger than you. And that was just it. It was just the fight sort of over.
But that's another difficulty, right? Because Kevin Lee has always been remarkably strong, but at least some of that, a significant portion of that phenomenon has to be because he's a welterweight-sized man fighting in the lightweight division. And now he's moving up to welterweight to fight RDA here. And so does he still have a relative strength advantage over another former lightweight who has now had time to grow into the 170-pound division? I don't know. Is he stronger than Colby Covington?
I think he probably is stronger than Colby Covington.
It's possible.
Well, Covington is not a big welterweight.
No. Well,
I think there's a solid chance with Kevin Lee we see a bit of a Jake Matthews thing going on where we're like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Colby
Like, when we
Covington's he's not a big welterweight, and his diet plan for every training camp consists about 80% boogers. So that's my read on Colby Covington as a human being. So there's something there. Sorry, I don't know why I interrupted you just to make one really bad joke. Please go on.
We are here for incredibly petty digs at Colby Covington, and I'm sure he would be here for them too. But
he will be recording me doing it.
So, what are the other things about Lee that kind of tend to characterize him? I mean, his performance against Iaquinta was genuinely baffling. Mm-hmm. Like, it is at least partially the old, style matchups don't change over time thing, but it was also him fighting like a moron. Mm-hmm. In that he didn't shoot for a single takedown until it was 6 or 7 minutes into the fight. He seemingly was convinced that he could just win a pure kickboxing match with Iaquinta for like large portions of that fight, and he just kind of exhausted himself mentally. I think because he was just trying to keep up with someone who is just far more comfortable and experienced in that area than him. So, I think in part that was a game planning issue that he saw Khabib fucking Al up on the feet and was like, I can do that. I don't even have to set my takedowns up first. Yeah. Like Khabib did. I'm just going to do it straight up right from the beginning. I'm going to prove how much better I am than him. And that was stupid. But the book on Al hadn't really been written by that point, and it still kind of hasn't. But the book on RDA kind of has been written.
Yeah.
It really is as simple as just mash him into the fence and be a better clinch fighter than him. The question is Lee a better clinch fighter than him? And can Lee keep the kind of pace that Covington could? And I'm genuinely not sure.
Me neither. I really don't think Lee's a better clinch fighter. Kevin Lee is, as you pointed out before we started recording, like very much a body lock takedown guy. He's certainly strong in the clinch. I can think of other examples, though, of like body lock takedown specialists getting fucked up by Thai clinch people. Like, for example, Rose Namajunas, pretty good clinch wrestler. Not bad with her double underhooks and everything. Does that translate into the ability to compete with more striking-oriented clinch fighters? No, not exactly. They're different skill sets, and I've never seen Lee demonstrate the ability to compete with someone in like a collar tie, elbow and knee kind of battle. And in a couple specific examples, like the Francisco Trinaldo fight, for example, Trinaldo was able to time a lot of Lee's entries with just big uppercuts and stuff. So he may have had some advantage in having like interrupted Lee's ability to transition after connecting in the clinch initially. But once they were in the clinch, Lee just basically got stalled out, not being able to finish takedowns. And then once Trinaldo managed to find enough space for himself, he had great success hitting him with elbows and punches on the brakes. Like Lee is just not ready for them. And this is something we see with Lee in striking outside the clinch too. Like this is, I say like he has trouble with phase shifting, but really he's the simple truth is he's still just not a great striker. He's got a couple of really impressive singular skills. He's got a good hard jab, which is helped by the fact that he has those cheater arms. He is genuinely a very quick and powerful kicker. Like Kevin Lee has a great high kick. He's got good body kicks. He's got good front kicks. His kicking dexterity and power are all actually really impressive. But like consistently against Iaquinta, he would step in with a jab and then completely put himself out of position right after landing that shot. Like step back with the lead foot so that he squared himself up, head staying center, not taking an angle. He's constantly getting surprised in the striking realm by like answers to his attacks. And that's true in the clinch as well as it is at range. And I don't know, like that does seem like there's significant chance for someone like RDA to constantly be hitting Kevin Lee on the brakes, to be forcing space and cracking him with a hard strike while he's still focused on, reacting to the pressure.
Yeah, I'm just not convinced he can. I mean, this is the thing, is that the idea of having a largely kickboxing based fight with Iaquinta was a bad one, but it was good experience. Like,
sure.
he still managed to, it was still time for him to figure, if he is, as he appears to be, a coachable, somewhat rote fighter who has issues but works diligently on them kind of thing, he is not simply not an organic fighter in some phases, then that kind of thing is great, because it's a tough fight that he may delusionally think that he won, where he got to see, like, he got to experience what it's like to be just mentally outskilled, to just be outskilled down the stretch, and to feel like, okay, this is the actual limits of where I am as a striker. So it truly
was a thing of being like outthought, or Iquin's experience and understanding of striking was like the real difference there. That Lee could just not think more than one or two steps into an exchange, and anytime he would make an adjustment, he would expose himself to the thing he had done 3 adjustments ago. He would forget about that change and then start getting caught by that again. So he was always like strategically a step or two behind Iquinta. But yeah, like, he went 5 rounds and survived. Having that experience is something. Do you question how valuable that experience is when, in light of the fact that he is still convinced that he won that fight? Like, does that change anything?
I think it changed. It doesn't. I don't think it really changes much, because I still think he is, in most things, he is overconfident, but he is not stupid.
Yeah.
I still think it will, and he has generally consistently showed some developments. I think that should have at least been a wake-up call for him, that you can't just go, like you can't just try and outdo other people against, top-end fighters. You can't just, I'm going to deliberately fight a dumb fight against him because I'm pretty sure I just want to do better than Khabib did. That kind of experience is useful, because it's the kind of thing that is incredibly handy if, for whatever reason, your takedowns aren't coming, you're tired, you're in a fight, you need to fight it out on the feet for a while in the future. And then that's when that experience comes in handy.
Yeah, true.
Is that you it's when you're fighting, real fights with proper game plans kind of thing. And as we've said, the game plan here is a fairly clear one. But I do think that we're going to see some things like, I think we might be surprised at how much bigger Kevin Lee is than RDA. I think the size difference is actually going to be quite pronounced. I think Covington was a little larger than him, but he is not a big welterweight. I think Lee is actually both larger and stronger than Covington.
Fuck, he has a 7-inch reach advantage over RDA.
Jesus fucking Christ.
70 inches is RDA's reach. 77 Kevin Lee's. That is insane. He's only an inch taller. That's insane. That's insane. Yeah, the main thing is still, though, that, like, as long as Kevin Lee comes in here and tries to pressure, he still has not been, like, I don't know if I want to say he hasn't been that breakable. There's still, like, signs that Kevin Lee can be shaken and all that. The other big question is, though, like, have we ever seen RDA come back? His best effort ever may have been in that Covington fight, where he really rallied and won some late rounds, and still did not successfully win the fight back. How often have we seen RDA, whether against a wrestler or any other of the fighters who have beaten him, how often have we seen him have a bad start and then work his way back into the fight? He really seems like when he wins, it's because he's got tons of offensive momentum from the get-go and does not lose it.
Yep.
So, like, again, we're just expecting, like, these little singular moments. Like, I'm open to the possibility of Kevin Lee getting clipped in the clinch. There's all these opportunities, and getting hurt and RDA finishing him. It's possible. But it doesn't seem super likely. And Lee has shown the ability to get hurt and recover and still win many times. So... yeah,
that's true. They are thought of, like, RDA is thought of as being the kind of the heart fighter, and Kevin Lee is kind of the brash, dumb, like the brash kind of arrogant guy who folds under pressure. But honestly, yeah, Kevin Lee has come back to win fights more than
all the
RDA
time.
has.
He gets when in fights he's winning, he gets wobbled like 80% of the time, and still usually wins. So, yeah, I think I still have to pick Kevin Lee. Like, I still don't have faith in RDA to win this style matchup. I expect him against somebody who I have to assume understands that he needs to pressure. Once you start that pressuring, RDA isn't all that different from Edson Barboza. You know, like, he will plant his feet, as you said, and he will engage in the clinch, but once he starts to feel the pressure, it's not all that difficult to back him up. Getting him, what you do with him at the fence is where it changes, but getting him to the fence is not that much more difficult than it is with Edson Barboza. And I think I at this point I need to see RDA win a matchup against a pressure wrestler before I will ever pick him again to do it.
Man.
Do it, Phil. Disagree with me.
I don't know.
Come on, bitch.
That's the thing. I genuinely really like both of these fighters, which I don't think many people do.
Yeah.
I think people, I mean, a lot of people like RDA. I don't know if many people really like Kevin Lee.
Do they?
So
RDA maybe is like, maybe hardcore people like RDA, but RDA is an incredibly boring person. So I think most people just don't care.
He's an incredibly fun fighter, though.
Oh yeah,
and like people like the whole, you know, he's a respectful, like, he's just a respectful hard ass. I think he's very popular with hardcores. I think, yeah.
Now that he's lost a few, I think people have let up.
Because it's my thing to stick with style matchups that never change, and this kind of is one.
Yeah. I'm going to once again use your own wisdom against you, Phil. Did I make a pick like that a couple weeks ago? I'll let you think while I...
Yeah, I think you might have done. Maybe last week. Yeah, I think I'm gonna pick Kevin Lee as well. I've got to go for my own... Even though it makes me feel bad, and RDA is in many ways the technically superior fighter. I think, like I said, I think people are going to see the size. People are going to see the size difference in the cage, and they're going to be like, "How the fuck was Kevin Lee a lightweight?" And that, you know, going back to T-Bow and Guida, it's just been huge. I mean, Guida isn't even that big, but just powerful, aggressive, and put him back into the fence and work from there. And just given the fact that I expect, you know, Kevin Lee is in his physical prime, and RDA has had a long, tough career, I expect Kevin Lee to be more durable at welterweight. I expect him to get wobbled way less. As pretty much everyone does when they go from making insane cuts. That's another agenda of ours we should have in mind for this pick, is that we should have a vested interest in seeing Kevin Lee's durability skyrocket at 170. So yeah, and I think, you know, Kevin Lee's just gotten better at taking shots. Sure. So again, a lot of times people get wobbled just because they're inexperienced. They flinch. They don't brace for the shot. They don't see it coming soon enough. You know. Getting your ass kicked by a few better strikers can help with that, genuinely. And RDA he's nearer his 35th birthday now than he is his 34th. Like, I think he's just finally making those adjustments to actually be able to fight against type, to beat his nightmare style matchups. But it's probably too late. And he started his MMA career when Kevin Lee was 11 years old. Right. It's probably just too late with a young and still improving fighter like an incredible athlete like Kevin Lee out there. So anyway, we've talked about this fight too much, Phil. When we come back, Neil Magny, Vicente Luque, Shoeface versus Hainish, and UFC 237. All of that and more.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Due to unforeseen circumstances and scheduling changes, we here at Heavy Hands have made the decision to alter our analysis of the fight that was formerly Vicente Luque versus Neil Magny. Enjoy. Oh god, it's already almost 4. I'm so sorry. Okay, hello. Welcome back to Heavy Hands. Derek Krantz, Vicente Luque. Phil, how, no, let me phrase this another way. How far is Derek Krantz, his head going to fly when this fight concludes? How many rows into the crowd?
7 rows.
Okay, anybody out there, any listeners less than 7? Call in and let us know what you think. Yeah, I mean, this feels like a bad matchup for Derek Krantz, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Derek Krantz.
He's also a guy on which the book has been somewhat written.
Mm-hmm.
If also someone who has been, like, a surprising overperformer throughout much of his career. Like, I am still sort of shocked that
Derek Krantz
beat Kelvin Gastelum over 5 rounds.
Mm-hmm. We regret to inform you that due to unforeseen negative comments that we have yet to receive, we at Heavy Hands have decided to waylay our discussion of Derek Krantz versus Vicente Luque and just move on to Shoeface versus Hainish instead. Enjoy. How about Antonio Carlos Jr. and Ian Hainish, Phil?
This is another interesting fight where Hainish really shouldn't be able to win it. This is one of these. This is very much a kind of Alexander Hernandez type thing, where he's just been put into the UFC, given a crazy hard style matchup, and won it, and they're just like, all right, do that again, but harder. There was no reason for him to be able to beat Cesar Ferreira. He wasn't supposed to be able to survive on the ground with him. Wasn't supposed to have that level of experience, but he was just able to basically kind of outlast him. He was just too aggressive, too willing to fight his way out of situations, too willing to surprise Ferreira by attacking off his back, and just didn't give up until he managed to knock Ferreira down, at which point Ferreira was just like, I'm done with this.
It was a real example of the value of aggression. Like, even Hainish has terrible takedown defense for a wrestler, and Ferreira just kept getting him down, but he would just like elbow him in the top of the head and just keep working and never truly accept that he had been taken down and put on his back. And that was enough. The question is, does Shoeface have the same kind of, I don't know, mental obstacles that Ferreira has, that when he encounters that, does it also sort of take the edge off of his offense?
So I think what you're asking here is Hainish as good as prime Dan Kelly?
That is what I'm asking, my friend. Or has Antonio Carlos Jr. successfully, has he moved far enough ahead that Dan Kelly, the chip shop kick, has vanished in the rearview mirror? The Ladbrokes chip shop kick.
I think he'll always wake up screaming about the chip shop kick. Every now and again, it will just surface from the darkest parts of his subconscious.
Yeah, how could it not? Occasionally I wake up screaming, having a night terror about it. Didn't even happen to me.
Yeah, I think he's improved enough to be able to get around that. I mean, firstly, like you said, Hainish's takedown defense is surprisingly not good, and Carlos Jr. is much more dangerous than Ferreira is, and from top position. Not that Cesar Ferreira is a particularly an undangerous, this isn't a word, fighter from top position, but he doesn't really have many different things he wants to do. He's pretty much just like, I'm going to get you down, I'm going to pass the half guard, and I'm going to arm triangle you. Or I'm going to pass the side control, and I'm going to arm triangle you. And that's sort of it. Doesn't really have many other things he wants to do. Antonio Carlos Jr. has a lot of things he wants to do to you on the ground. Not limited to the fact that he can just fuck you up with ground and pound. Secondly, he just throws a ton more than Ferreira does on the feet. He's a much more capable kicker. I suspect if we're looking at a really poor analogy of Hainish as a kind of Hernandez who just bounds around with lots of athleticism and speed, a pretty good way of cutting that down is just by booting him. Just big sweeping kicks. And Shoeface is obviously a ginormous middleweight with huge reach on his kicks. So yeah, I think it's just, like I said, it's the same basic style matchup. This is still at its heart, it's a breakable BJJ specialist, but I think there's just too many things in Shoeface's favor. And the fact that, like, whilst that performance was impressive as all hell, it really did hinge on Hainish just knocking Ferreira down in the second round. Otherwise, he was probably on his way to losing it.
Yeah. It hinged on the physical and mental fragility of his opponent. In some ways that I don't think. I mean, there's the chip shop kick, of course. It will haunt all our nightmares. But, it's pretty likely that at this point, viewed in the context of his whole career, that is his Bader getting guillotined by Ortiz moment. Where, like, that's the low point. That is the lowest, most humiliating prospect loss you could imagine for a prospect this highly touted. But then we look back a few years later and it's like, okay, you know what? He's actually pretty good. All those things that we saw Antonio Carlos Jr. working on around that time, all of those fights he had in that little stretch of development where he was using this bouncy footwork and he was popping out that jab and he would do that for a round and then he would get really tired and everything would fall apart. Like, all those things he were working on, they now feel like very reliable parts of his game. Like, he can go in there and he is a pretty good boxer. He does have pretty good footwork. He does have a variety of ways of setting up his entries to his takedowns. He seems a lot more flexible and more comfortable in fighting, either planting his feet, moving backwards, or moving forwards than someone like Cesar Ferreira, who really just has one way of fighting and just starts doing that, and it's retreating. And he does it more and more intensely the more aggressively his opponent tries to catch up to him. And then, yeah, a much more aggressive ground game, as you said. I just don't think that Hainish's game is anywhere near deep enough, to face what is essentially just the harder version of the fight he just sort of narrowly won. Yep.
And I think there's a solid chance that he's just going to try the same thing. He's just going to try to explode back to his feet, and Shoeface will just bait him into just a rear naked choke.
Yeah. It wasn't like it was an example of brilliant game planning that won in that last fight. He didn't do anything novel. He just did the Ian Hainish shit. And it just, worked better than we expected, but this is still not that much deeper, I don't think. He didn't reveal any new depths. So, Shoeface it is. And that is officially all that you should feel any compulsion to watch in this entire card, except for the first 3 fights. Julio Arce, Julian Erosa. Don't particularly care about Erosa, but I like Arce. Zach Cummings, Trevin Giles should actually be genuinely very fun. And ladies and gentlemen, Patrick Cummins is fighting Ed Herman on the ESPN Plus.
Shit.
Prelims.
Yes.
You need to watch that fight. Skip everything else until you get to the last 3. But that should be great. You can have like a whole meal and drink an entire 12-pack of beer and then fall asleep before Kevin Lee is done out wrestling RDA. All right, let's take a break.
Also watch, I will say, you should also watch Charles Oliveira versus Nick Lentz in case you haven't gotten enough of Charles Oliveira finishing Nick Lentz in your life already.
Yeah, and actually, now that I think of it, I do want to see that again. So I do want to see that again. Watch Charles Oliveira does it, and then he gets on the mic and is like, MAGA, my president, just absorbs Nick Lentz's shitty political opinions by guillotining him. That'd be great. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, UFC 237, I think this is the stuff that we really want to talk about. Rose Namajunas versus Jessica Andrade, Cannonier Silva, Volkanovski, Aldo, and more besides, as much as we have time to get to. All of that after this. Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description, you know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. And you can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show. All right, welcome back to Heavy Hands. Let's go ahead and jump in on the main event of UFC 237. Rose Namajunas fought Jessica Andrade. Our main topic last week was basically, is Jessica Andrade still the toughest style matchup for Rose Namajunas in the division? Phil, do you feel that question was satisfactorily answered?
Not really.
Why is that?
It was a strange fight.
You think so?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, it didn't really answer any questions about the narrative going... if you believed in a particular narrative before this fight, I don't think there was much to really dissuade you either way. You can believe in either model of this fight that you particularly want to, and there's nothing to really change it.
So basically just to clarify what you're saying, the two narratives as I see them would be, the two things I've been seeing a lot of online are basically what I was expecting, which was Namajunas wins big early. She does the Jędrzejczyk thing, but with more power, and then starts to fall apart more dramatically as the fight goes on. And the other predominant narrative is Rose was absolutely dominating Andrade and got fluke KO'd.
Yep.
You feel like both of those are equally valid?
Pretty much, yeah.
Interesting. I have some other thoughts, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, I mean, there is a tendency, I think, with to extrapolate attritional fighters' success very, very early. Like, in certain cases, like, let's say Condit Woodley, for example, or classically, like, recent Dustin Poirier fights, is that there's this thing where, like, there's a certain narrative that, like, one of these fighters is perhaps mentally less durable than the other one. The other one is one who starts slow and then builds. And then as soon as the fight changes from being one person getting buzzsawed to that same person getting buzzsawed less badly, people are like, yes, it's just, this is it. This is the turning point. This is just, and the success will just shoot off into the future. And, like, I never really buy that. Much as I, like, loved Carlos Condit and even picked him stupidly to beat Tyron Woodley, I just watched that fight and I was just like, yeah, you just went from getting shit kicked to getting shit kicked less badly and then got weirdly finished. Or, like, the Poirier Gaethje, for example. People are like, he's landing the leg kicks. Gaethje's pretty much getting fucked up, but he is fucking Poirier up more as the fight goes on. But then it just didn't matter because Poirier just finished him. Mm-hmm. Like, or, the Alvarez fights, which managed to usefully give us the same situation twice, where Poirier was fucking Alvarez up. Alvarez had some success, and then brain farted it away in some way. And you could then see, like, was Alvarez going to snowball that success into a win? And the answer in both those cases was just kind of no. Mm-hmm. Because that was sort of the story of the fight, is that Rose was fucking up Andrade really bad.
Yeah.
And then she was fucking Andrade up less bad. And then Andrade, like, finished her with her first major piece of committed offense that she landed in the fight. And I hesitate to call that a fluke, because it's not a fluke. I mean, it's like, if Rose had, like, one punch KO'd Andrade, I wouldn't have necessarily said it was a fluke. I would have said it's an unlikely way for that fight to end. Like, a fluke is John Jones against Chael Sonnen. But
I didn't really see that John Jones beat Chael Sonnen.
Wow,
this is Phil's hottest opinion yet.
This is yeah. How could he withstand the real American wrestling of Chael Sonnen? No, the toe. Like, the toe exploding, that is a fluke, because that's something that no one has tried to do. Yes. It happened completely out of the blue. That is the classic MMA fluke.
John Jones's foot has slid across the canvas many times. Most of the time, his toe does not stay behind.
Yeah. But like also, Jessica Andrade has slammed a lot of people, and she's never instantly knocked them out.
Well, most of them aren't clinging onto her arm.
Yeah,
she's slamming them.
But this is the thing. It's always a combination of like technical errors and luck and various other things with pretty much any knockout. But I don't think it's a particularly replicable way of her winning. So you could say so basically that was the way the fight was going. Like Rose was fucking her up. Rose was fucking her up less badly. You can extrapolate that into a Andrade win if you so wish, or you can just say Rose was really fucking her up super badly, and you can extrapolate that one as well. And both of those are totally fine takes. I don't feel particularly strongly about it. The only thing that really surprised me was how offensively nasty both of them were.
Mm-hmm.
Like this was going to be an exciting action fight, whatever was going to happen. I didn't realize Rose was going to fuck Andrade up that badly.
Yeah,
I mean, she put more damage on Andrade in like the first 3 minutes of that fight than I think Joanna did over 15.
Mm-hmm.
Like she almost finished her with that. Like she badly hurt her with that knee. Probably not almost finished, but like.
And that was her
worse than I've seen her be hurt at that weight class.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Who's even dropped Andrade at 125 or 115? Namajunas stunned her several times and dropped her in the first round.
Yeah. And then again, Andrade, as I said, like she basically landed. I mean, she had landed leg kicks and body shots up till that point, but this was her first like real clean, damaging piece of offense, and it just finished the fucking fight.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I do think it was not just Rose fucking her up less badly. I mean, I think you have to give Andrade a little bit of credit for that. She kept walking forward and getting tagged. Her defense is really, really one-dimensional. But I think this is also the difference between the offense of someone like Jędrzejczyk and someone like Namajunas. Jędrzejczyk has more rhythmic variation and more like speed-based tricks in how she lands her shots than Namajunas does. Namajunas is much more likely, I think, to, beyond the jab, if it looks like she's throwing a right hand, she's throwing a hard right hand, and most likely she's throwing an equally hard left hook after that. And Andrade was genuinely picking up on some of those shots with her parries, was also making sure that whether she ate a shot or managed to deflect it, she would storm forward with a combination after it happened. And the leg kicks. Rose was not just fucking Andrade up less badly as the fight went on. After the first 3 minutes, she started to having to actually exchange with Andrade. So by the end of the first round, it was already, I think, a different fight. And in the second round, she did not have the same strong start she did in the first. She still had a stronger start than when the round ended. But I don't feel like it's unfair to extrapolate that to, well, this isn't in a vacuum. I have seen Rose falter to this kind of growing pressure before. And I have.
I still think Andrade. Yeah, I know, but I still think Andrade's pressure was still like very sporadically effective in that second round, I would say, and maybe you can extrapolate it off into. But like I said, she was also still eating tons and tons of really hard punches. That like, if Rose just sat down on her, if Rose did, this is the thing. If Andrade forced Rose to exchange, I was actually less convinced that she could survive that than I was at the before I saw this fight.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember who said it. I wish I could, but someone on Twitter made the, I think, very astute observation that this fight is not being billed as a battle between the two hardest hitters in this division, and it should be.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's how it looked. Was like this was a heavy risk fight by the standards of women's strawweight.
But yeah, I would say things like in the Poirier-Gaethje fight, for example, Poirier was in worse trouble by this point than Rose was.
Yes. Does Poirier have a historic problem with not being able to turn things back around when he ends up in trouble?
Yeah. Before then, he did. Like, I would argue before that fight.
I disagree. I think his main problem was getting sparked out.
No, I would argue in fights like the one against Cub Swanson and the one against Korean Zombie, his main problem was that and against, to a lesser extent, against McGregor, his problems were that he got over emotional and freaked out. I thought there was a very solid chance that he would do that against both Alvarez and
okay, I suppose that's fair.
And then subsequently Poirier.
Yeah.
I mean, subsequently Holloway. I thought he would be in serious trouble against all of those guys, but he's just a different guy now. So I was at least willing to give Rose the credit that she could survive that. But as I said, it was a super weird finish.
Perhaps she has now gained the ability to maintain composure, and we definitely saw signs of that in the Jacek fight. Although again, a substantially different type of opponent, willing to do a much lesser degree of violence than what Andrade was already starting to do to Namajunas here.
Yeah, I will say that. So yeah, I mean, it definitely could have been that, even if that slam didn't finish her, she might have had to struggle to get up and then, panic. And I will say that when I first saw her using the Kimura to get out of the slam, I was like, that's super impressive. But it's also one of those things where, I don't know if you necessarily want to train things that you have to do perfectly to get out of stuff. Mm-hmm. It's super impressive if you pull it off, but as you get tired and you get more fucked up, do you necessarily want to be going for, things where you have to be really technical and you have to do it just right?
You know when Holly Holm ended up actually defending one armbar against Ronda Rousey? And then most of the rest of that fight did not consist of her actually defending armbars. She was beating those things several steps before they were actually locked in. That's what that phase was for Rose. Ideally, you don't end up in a situation where Andrade is just about to fucking slam you on your head. That's the wrong phase to end up in with this woman.
I mean, Rose has always loved the Kimura, but that is a submission you use when you generally want to use that when you're stronger than the other person.
Well, I mean, she almost got the armbar off it in the first round. The Kimura is a very versatile grip. It's just a very strong control hold. But I don't know. Yeah, in my perspective, totally accuse me of coming into this with my own preconceived biases and everything. The only thing that I found that, and this is again something you've already said, it's easy to just stick to your own narrative having watched this. So if you think that's what I'm doing, that's more than fair. But yeah, that's fine. I'm muting you right now, you motherfucker. But watching this, even if the first round wasn't bad, the second round wasn't bad for Rose. It was different. She totally ruled the first round, except for the last minute. And then the second round had the feeling of being much more even. I know she still landed lots of big shots on Andrade, but she was exchanging. She was being countered to the legs and the body pretty consistently after those exchanges, and was a lot easier to back up into the fence as a result of that. I just think that we were seeing this headed in the direction of, I don't know, whatever the similarities.
I think it's generally best not to think, I don't think people should think of attritional fighters, be they John Lineker or Carlos Condit or anything, as being immortal.
Oh, no, especially not.
That's the thing, Andrade had already soaked up tons and tons of damage. At some point, people, as in the Gaethje fight, people just, against both Alvarez and Poirier, people just reach their capacity for absorbing damage, and suddenly it's just over.
The more you get hurt, the easier you are to hurt badly. Undoubtedly true. But, all the same, whatever the similarities between Namajunas and someone like Dustin Poirier may be, do you think has Dustin Poirier ever been relieved by a loss?
Oh yeah, I mean, she's a very,
I get that, by the way.
Unique person.
I have been relieved by losing competitions in my life, so I sympathize with that. Part of the reason I really like Rose Namajunas, she's very relatable. But
yeah, I mean, she's definitely one of the people for whom MMA is it's not necessarily a competitive thing; it is therapy.
Mm-hmm. She's much more on the Rory McDonald side of things.
Yeah, she's just one of those people where and clearly the way in which she appreciates the sport has changed dramatically over time. I mean, the first time anyone ever heard of any of us ever really heard of her was that crazy flying armbar submission. Mm-hmm. And do you remember how she reacted when she got it? And she just ran around spazzing out, fucking throwing herself all over the cage in this insane, like, ecstasy of, like, happiness. Mm-hmm. You just won't see that again from her. She's not, whatever this sport is to her, it's not that anymore.
She has become thug. But yeah, I just don't know. It's one of those things where I still need to see Rose Namajunas overcoming that sort of slippery slope. I need to see her successfully claw her way back to the top before I will ever imagine that is what is happening. And even if it doesn't, the one of the major factors here was the power. She was doing what Jędrzejczyk did to Andrade. All the same tactical openings were there, but she was cracking her as she was doing it. And yes, power adds up. I
did think she also looked brilliant for that first round.
Oh,
She's
absolutely.
Always been a fast starter, but just her ability to, use lateral movement more than she has before, her ability to mix up her entries and exits, she was moving her head when she was coming off the center line. Like, it was amazing. By any standards, that was a tremendous outfighting performance against an admittedly incredibly crude opponent. But wow, she is if she's nothing else, she is one of the best fast starters in MMA.
Yeah,
and she will be that even if she retires now. I think I will always remember those incredible fast starts.
The first round against Jędrzejczyk, this first round, some incredible, and just knowing where she came from, watching the first round against Esparza from then till now.
Yeah,
it's an entirely different fighter.
Yeah, I'll be sad. I'll be sad if she. I will be a little sad if she retires, but also I won't be because, as I said, if this sport isn't doing for her what it did, then she's given us some incredible performances, and you couldn't ask for anything more.
Sure, I'll be happy for her. I'll be very selfishly sad for myself though, because I love Rose Namajunas. I really want to see her fight a lot more than this, and she's still so young. But yeah, okay. So that's that. Let's skip the fuck out of Cannonier Silva since we're running short on time. Let's talk briefly about Volkanovski Aldo. Phil, how did Alex Volkanovski do a low stakes version of what Max Holloway did and successfully beat Jose Aldo on the feet? How did he just beat him by not committing to anything and just feinting and tapping him for 3 rounds?
So this is the first we've seen Jose Aldo get outfought before, and this is the first time we've seen him get outgamed. Mm-hmm. And this is the problem with just having a counter-based game plan. Mm-hmm. The problem with Jose Aldo, as we've mentioned many times, even before the Conor McGregor fight, is that he sits down on his punches too much, and this means that he is profoundly unwilling to lead because he is going to unbalance. He's not going to unbalance himself if he throws, but he's just going to punch from the goddamn floor. Mm-hmm. And this means that he wants the opponent already out of position by the time he's throwing. I mean, even if you look at a lot of his recent performances, and if you look at a lot of his title performances, he's profoundly uncomfortable leading. Mm-hmm. He wants the other guy to throw something before he comes in. And in multiple occasions, across multiple sports, we've seen that it's really hard to do that and win consistently. And I think more so in MMA. He's still the best defensive fighter in MMA, but that's not enough. But if the guy you're fighting just never sits down on anything, This was, we've seen this happen with, let's say, Phil Davis, Lyoto Machida. We've seen it happen with. What's another example? Seen it happen in that goddamn awful. Oh, we've seen it happen in Louis Ngannou in a shit ass fight, and that awful fucking Fury Klitschko fight. All of these fights where someone was committed to the counter.
How about Nunes Shevchenko?
Yep.
Thompson Woodley. Oh God. I hate this fight now. I was previously begrudgingly impressed by what Volkanovski did, but now I know.
Should be impressed.
No. Now I know what kind of monsters he's in league with. All right, he's in league with the Stephen Thompsons and the Valentina Shevchenkos of the world. Somehow he's connected to that shadow realm, and now I hate him.
Oh, you love Tyson Fury. He looks unathletic.
Yeah, I do. And I do think...
Oh, damn hypocrite.
It's genuinely impressive. Volkanovski took the building blocks of what Max Holloway did and took out the drawing Aldo into a fight part of it. You know, he was not like, I need to drown him in his inability to decide when to counter. Like, it didn't have to progress beyond just not giving Aldo enough time. It's like he turned the new 3-round dynamic on its head, you know? Like,
yeah, I mean, I think he didn't even build on what Max Holloway did. I think what happened in this fight is that Jose Aldo looked at Volkanovski and he went, that's Frankie Edgar. And I think Volkanovski just built on the Frankie Edgar game plan. Like, a lot of what Frankie Edgar landed in that fight was meaningless, trashy leg kicks. Mm-hmm. And Volkanovski was just like, oh shit, what if I just do this? What if I just land? And to his credit, Volkanovski did an amazing job of maintaining range. He did a great job. Like, he started off with a million spastic feints and just gradually sort of jiggled his way into range over time. Mm-hmm. And then just sat there. And if Aldo tried to punch back, he just jumped back out of the way with a high guard. Aldo was still unwilling to throw combinations for whatever reason. And so Volkanovski was just able to build up kind of leads full of meaningless volume. Mm-hmm. And that was amazingly impressive, frankly. Because it's shown that he's now won fights in multiple different ways, like completely different ways using the same basic toolkit. He's won them with crafty striking pressure. He's won them with just forcing people into the fence and fucking them up. And now he's won them with just outgaming one of the best champions in UFC history, just by exploiting. And let's not take credit away from Volkanovski. He exploited long-standing flaws in Jose Aldo's game.
Yeah, that's the thing. Jose Aldo is he's not Tyron Woodley, but he got made to look a lot like Tyron Woodley, and that is something. Like, do you think, I'm thinking of Aldo's first fight with Frankie Edgar, and it was like he did discover the game plan that he successfully and masterfully used against Edgar in their rematch in that fight. But he did start more aggressively. He started leading off with 1-1-2s. He started landing hard low kicks. And it's like in this one with only 3 rounds to go, he was just stuck in the purely countering style instead. I don't know. It's like, do you think he's lost some of the ability to lead over time? Or is it just, frankly, again, Volkanovski, the reason I was impressed by this and not too heartbroken, more mystified than I was sad, is like Volkanovski just did what you're supposed to do against a counter puncher. You just don't give them any looks that take you longer to recover from than it would take them to pounce.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I think that he approached this fight much more like it was Edgar 2, where Aldo was very concerned for whatever reason with getting out of the way of the right hand. He was very dialed in to that. And I think he just thought, I can deal with this guy just by because when Volkanovski, again, he did an amazing job of not merely just taking steam off his punches, and kicks, but he mixed it up a ton as well. Mm-hmm. The amount of strikes he threw, and one of the actual clean strikes that he landed on Aldo was he just feinted the right hand and then just threw a long power jab that Just, I think he shifted stance, came forward, and like Aldo was just not prepared to be hit by it.
Ross Pearson-esque left cross.
Yeah,
Alvarez also really likes to throw that, like throw away the right hand and then just come straight up the middle with a long left.
Yeah, sort of like a rapier jab kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he did an amazing job of not allowing Aldo to catch on to either the strike he was going to throw or the rhythm he was going to throw it at.
Mm-hmm.
And whilst he probably couldn't have kept that up for 15 minutes, he burned huge amounts of the clock just by holding Aldo against the fence. And again, Aldo, incredibly difficult to take down, but not a tremendously threatening clinch fighter.
Mm-hmm.
Aldo's general defense in the clinch is to stiff arm, push away, and get back out again.
Mm-hmm.
So it made a ton of sense.
There was a moment where he tried to reverse. He tried to take Volkanovski down and then got his back, but like,
yeah,
the three round thing did not change Jose Aldo that fundamentally. He still could not make himself, push all that much harder for that. I don't know. It did seem strange that he was so committed to the counter. It seemed like he was particularly committed to it in this fight. But again, I think some of that was maybe sometimes even his leads sort of. Goddamn, I'm just knocking everything over my desk over here. You can tell I'm distraught, Phil. I'm trying to keep it inside. But even his leads sometimes maybe feel like counters to him. He's getting some read on the opponent, and Volkanovski was just remarkably difficult to read. He just never stopped giving false impressions. So huge credit to him. He is my enemy for life now. Yes?
Yeah, fuck him. I will say one thing about the general narrative is that Aldo got old overnight, suddenly again in a different way. Wasn't able to pull the trigger, blah, blah, blah. This does a lot of disservice to Volkanovski, I think.
Yeah.
I will say there is one case where, in this fight, where I was like, that is uncharacteristic. And it was the 10-second clapper. And more than that, the end of the rounds.
Where was Crazy Aldo?
There you go. We know Aldo does this, right? And Volkanovski, whatever else he proved himself to be in that fight, is not a fearsome counterpuncher. At least not yet. He might be next time. He's whatever the fuck he's doing. He's clearly improving at insane rates. But we know Jose Aldo tries to put the stamp on fucking rounds. At the end of the round, if it's been close and it's been contested, he will fucking go after the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he just didn't. Like, I think right at the end of the fight, he threw one half-hearted flying knee. Like, nothing behind it, but we've seen him literally chase people around the fucking cage at the 10-second mark.
I've seen him almost leap over the fence in an attempt to take someone's head off with a flying knee. The Superman punch off the cage, maybe the best shot of his fight against Frankie Edgar, other than the leg kicks. That was in the last 2 seconds of the entire 5-round fight. Like, that was strange. He seemed to have a particularly difficult time convincing himself to go after Volkanovski, even when it did seem like, and his corner was telling him that's what he needed to do. But we have seen elements of this, like, we've seen some of this before in Aldo, that you can, doing the right things, convince him to shut off certain aspects of his game. We've seen this most profoundly in recent years with people who have managed to convince him to just stop throwing leg kicks. That's become a more and more common feature of his fights in the last few years. But now was like the first time we really saw it with every aspect of his game, I think. But again, I think a lot of credit for that has to go to Volkanovski. He read the matchup. He just didn't give Aldo anything to bite on. And he didn't really hit him all that hard or that often to like sucker him into a fight either. He kind of managed the pace beautifully. So.
Yeah, I definitely think like the fight was close enough that I think Crazy Aldo could have definitely like won it if he'd just come out for 10 seconds and gone berserk at the end of each one of those rounds.
Yeah.
But also, like, it's also a fight where, and I've seen some people like actually scored it for Aldo online. Again, I think I may have scored the first round for him, but even that first round, I just thought, you cannot fight like this and expect to win.
Yeah. I thought he got the first round, but I agree. I don't think he won anything else in that fight.
Yeah, you can't expect judges to score this for you. If you're getting numerically out, if you're going to try and Assensow it, you need to visibly rock the guy.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to do an Assensow or a Woodley or whatever, like you want to just win off a few key punches, they need to be clean and visible, and honestly, they need to be to the head.
Mm-hmm.
You can't try and win off because most of his good work tended to be body shots and leg kicks, and judges just don't score them very well.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't fight like that and expect to win.
Yeah, it's the truth. Jose, I still love you, and I always will. But that's about all we have time for from UFC 237. Before we wrap up, Phil, anything coming out this week?
Just a breakdown of RDA Lee, and other than that, I will be hiding away and crying at how incredibly depressed UFC 237 made me.
Well, in between my own bouts of crying and despair, I am going to be working on an article that should be near and dear to both of our hearts, Phil. I'm writing an article based on one of the prevailing narratives that has come out after Namajunas Andrade, and I've decided to call it Namajunas versus Andrade, athleticism is cheating. Because that is something I've been seeing people say, and I have said that myself in the past when I'm like, why the fuck does this guy who just happens to be a good athlete deserve to beat my favorite fighter who's, has 2 bad hips and has had his knee replaced 4 times, but works really hard? And this was maybe the example of that.
This whole fucking card was just an example of youth and athleticism.
Yeah.
Like, every single fucking fight. Every single one.
Yes, just the hard work being invalidated by...
Even our girl, extra thick with 2 C's, Betchko hair. God damn it.
Yeah, she did so well. She did so well, and it still didn't fucking matter. Yeah, so keep your eyes peeled to bloodyelbow.com for that this week. And until next week, when we will be talking to you about whatever the hell happens between Dos Anjos and Lee, but also, my God, the light heavyweight trilogy card of the decade. Alexander Gustafsson versus Anthony Smith, Volkan Oezdemir versus Ilir Latifi, and Jimmy Manuwa versus Alexander Rakic. All of that is happening next week. So we are very much looking forward to discussing that with you. And until then, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands. Now, Phil, do you think it would make sense for me to insert our Twitter handles in after the song finishes, since I forgot to say them?
Goddamn son of a bitch. What kind of promoter are you? What do I pay you for, Connor?
The rhythm was just there to go for the sign out, there was no time.
Yeah.